What's up, everyone? Welcome to Asher Talks Movies, and welcome to another episode of The Recap, the show we do here where we talk about some of the big entertainment topics of the week. I'm joined once again with my co host, Jed. Say hello to everyone, Jed.
Hello. Good to see everyone. Good to see you. We haven't done this in a little
Yes,
while,
I was,
so
I
we
was
have a
just
lot
about
to
to say
catch
that.
up.
We took a couple weeks off. We usually try to do these like every 2 weeks or so. But, we both have jobs and are busy. So we didn't get a chance to do it, but we're back and we have quite a bit to talk about. So we're just going to dive right into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about, I think, is going to be an interesting movie once it comes together. Robert Eggers is set to write and direct A Christmas Carol. So this is going to be a retelling of A Christmas Carol, written by Charles Dickens. And this is coming off of his success with Nosferatu. I'm very intrigued by this just because I like his visual style, and also this particular story lends itself to what Robert Eggers does really well with period pieces. And even though it's a Christmas movie, a Christmas story, um, it does have some very dark elements too, right? So I'm really curious to see what he does with those, with the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future, and all of that. One also thing I want to mention: this is the Deadline story. I was reporting this. Um, Willem Dafoe is among the top choice to play Ebenezer Scrooge. Hasn't been
Oh,
cast yet. That's not like but that's what they mentioned in there, which I think that would be amazing. Your
yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah. I kind of roll my eyes every time I see like they're doing A Christmas Carol again because talk about a movie that's been done to death, or a story that's been done to death. And I know there's different takes on it, but I love this, like approaching it like a horror, you know, uh not a horror movie, but a movie that has horror
Darker,
elements
like a
to it.
darker
Yes.
telling. Yeah.
Um I really enjoy that, and I'm really interested to see what his take is on this. I when I saw him, that's why, like, we send each other stories to put on here, and I'm like, wait, we got to put this one in here because
And I liked
wow,
it
what
because
a
that was like one of the last editions, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm put that on
yeah.
there. Um,
Um, but yeah, like I think this lends itself. I mean, obviously there are ghosts in it, but like I think it is a much more haunting story than what a lot of people remember, because
yeah,
we get a very cookie cutter kind of Christmas cheer thing going on in
yeah,
a lot of the versions. So to see this done in a more dark, sinister tone, I think could also make it propel it into a category of Christmas classics, because you know people want something different than the It's a Wonderful Life kind of
mm-hmm,
thing,
mm-hmm.
kind of a counterculture Christmas thing. I'm curious though, what is your go-to version of A Christmas Carol?
A Muppets Christmas Carol.
Of course, that's the only answer.
And
Like,
and and here's the thing, because you were mentioning, who typically get some cookie cutter versions. The funny thing is about the Muppets is that the Muppets can lend themselves to be more family friendly, which is what you kind of get with the Muppet version. But I think that's still one of the best retellings of A Christmas Carol, just because it does lean into some of those darker moments. Michael Caine is literally playing it straight as
which is
Ebenezer
great.
Scrooge.
Like, he's
Scrooge,
so
like
good in
he's
them.
yeah, he's like totally into it. And so you have the Muppets kind of balancing out like some of the wisecracks and jokes here and there, but he is totally playing a guy who's haunted by the decisions that he made in his past and regretting how things turned out in his life. And even how they use, especially once I remember watching this when I was younger, and when you get to the part where he sees the ghost of Christmas to come, or
Mhm.
maybe it's towards the end. It's a really dark. Like the movie changes.
It really
It gets
does in
dark. He's
that
in a
last segment.
cemetery. It's like, oh my goodness.
But there
Yeah.
is nothing
So,
scarier than the ghost of Christmas Past at the beginning. The first ghost that of the evening in the Muppet version is
oh,
this
because it's the
weird,
child. It's the child that's
yeah, it's
like
this weird baby
ghosty
glowing
child.
thing. Like, they should have made that a character that was recognizable maybe and not
Yeah.
so creepy, but
But hey, it works. I mean,
it
it's a
does, yeah.
memorable movie. It's again one of my go-tos during the Christmas season. So yeah, I'm very excited to see um, this just because I really enjoyed Nosferatu. And I've enjoyed most of Robert Eggers' movies. I
Yes.
know he has a new one coming up, Werewolf, which is going to be another like horror movie set in a very specific time period. So that's going to be curious. But yeah, Christmas Carol. So
Looking
I can't
forward
wait
to
to
it,
add
yeah.
that to my add that to my Christmas roster. So another big topic that everyone's been talking about has been this deal that's happening with Warner Brothers Discovery. And basically, it's going to be splitting into two separate companies. So you're going to have one company that's going to be mostly with streaming and content production. And then you're going to have the other company that's going to be basically centered around traditional television. Now, it literally just merged. When was this? I don't know when they did this, but it was
Not that long ago.
Discovery and then the Warner Media merged together to create Warner Brothers Discovery. And a lot of changes happened within that time period. Some of them we even talked about, Batgirl and whatnot, and Max and HBO Max
Acme
changing and things like
versus,
that. Yeah,
Coyote, yeah.
and so I think it's really interesting that now it's going to be two separate companies, and one is streaming and content production, the other one's traditional television, simply because, well, I mean, I think the writing's on the wall for a lot of like traditional television, linear television, where it's not profitable like it used to be. And
Mhm.
companies are trying to figure out what to do with their like legacy media. And streaming is where it's at. And it's probably the most profitable. And so you're going to have the one company, which is going to be led by David Zaslav, is going to be the streaming and content production. So that's going to include Max, HBO, Warner's TV, so it's studios, um, basically all the brands that we know. And then the traditional television is going to be um, networks like CNN and things like that. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's gonna be confusing for a lot of people because I didn't realize until, like, somewhat recently that the Discovery Plus app still existed,
Mm-hmm.
because after it merged into HBO Max and then Max, I thought, like, "Oh, that's to get rid so they don't have to keep up with both platforms," but no, that other platform was still going, so, like,
Mm-hmm.
that was kinda weird.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then they started removing content from Max, like, already, like a lot of the Adult Swim stuff isn't up there anymore, and
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about some other things, but I guess to afford that new Harry Potter series, you got to start making cuts or something. Like, it's
Yeah. Well, what was clear, so like in the stories that, we're talking about this split, the company has, was it $38 billion worth of debt. So obviously the cuts that they were making, they had some layoffs here and there. They made the tax write-offs for like the Batgirl movie. Like you said, they were
mhm.
removing content from the streaming platforms and then, licensing them out to like Netflix and other streaming platforms again to make money. It's interesting that the $38 billion of debt is going to be spun off onto the TV side.
Yeah, I thought that was
Um,
weird too.
again, all this has to be approved, but this is kind of how it's been set up. But yeah, I mean, it could be confusing for people. Honestly, I don't know if it really would be confusing for people because I think if you look at how they're streamlining this, most people are going to recognize the things that are in the streaming and content side of this new company. Um, People recognize Max. I mean, this kind of goes back to something we were going to talk about the last time we were going to do an episode, but did get a chance to, which is Max reverting back to HBO Max because HBO is still such a recognizable brand. I don't know why they removed it in the first place.
Yeah, I
Consultants,
don't
I
know
guess, that
either.
they pay way too much money for telling them, oh, you should get rid of HBO Max and call it Max. Simplify things. But yeah, changing the name back because that's the brand that's doing well. And of course, think about the series that most people are talking about. Series like White Lotus and Last of Us, right? That's that HBO Max
Mhm.
branding that does so well and is what's trending, and you can see it on social media. So I don't know. Most people probably don't even know that Warner Brothers Discovery is the company that's behind a lot of those Discovery uh, channels, or even some of the other brands that are part of that, until they, until they go to Max and they look at the bottom and they see all these other reality
Yeah,
shows and things. So I think splitting some of that stuff off, I don't think it's going to be confusing. I think it's going to be interesting to see what effect that's going to have on things like DC Studios,
mhm.
what effect that might have on HBO and Max content, what that effect is going to have with production, because Warner's TV and film studios, TV specifically, um, is a studio behind a lot of shows for other networks. So I don't know. It's a changing media landscape.
It's
I'm just curious to see how it's all going to play out.
I think where it's gonna get is if they start pulling things out of the HBO Max app again, where all of a sudden, like, you know, if God forbid, like Friends disappears out of there, I think you're going to have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
angry people and that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But I also think what's weird is when they merged together, you started to see things that you weren't sure who. I mean, I realize they're all produced under the same like
Right.
umbrella, but was this a discovery like ID kind of like true crime show that was on, or is this like an HBO miniseries doc
Yeah.
kind of thing? And
Yeah.
sometimes, I ended up clicking on things that I'm like, oh, if I would have known this, I wouldn't have even like clicked on this thing because it's
Yeah, that
cheap
happened to
and.
me too. Because HBO has some really good documentaries, some
Mhm.
documentary series, and then you had, like you said, like ID ones, which are, I don't think are up to the same level. Um, and so yeah, I can see where that confusion happened. But I think if anything, I think this sets up the possibility of one of these new companies being sold to someone else. I definitely think maybe the TV side could be sold to another bigger company that maybe wants to plus out its TV portfolio, or maybe they think they can do something with it, or who knows, maybe the other side, the HBO Max um, side of things, will be sold. Who knows? I think it's just interesting, just because Comcast literally did this last year. They announced that they were spinning off um, their cable networks into a new company called Versant. So
Mhm.
MSNBC, CNBC, USA, those networks would be part of Versant, and then everything else would be under the NBC Universal um, umbrella.
And it's interesting
Um,
you brought that up because I listened to some MSNBC like podcasts, and
mhm,
I mean, when that restructuring happened, a lot of people got cut. A lot of people that had been there for like a long, long time,
mhm,
people got shuffled around. So if that
mhm.
starts happening, like it's going to be interesting to see where those cuts will be made if somebody comes in to buy, Discovery, or they just have to because they just don't have the budget that they once did when they were all merged together. So,
Yeah, and again, what's that going to look like?
mhm.
Because it's interesting. It does set up the potential of another company coming in, buying them, or even I read somewhere, this also could mean just a better way to negotiate. It's easier to negotiate licensing deals with like a smaller set of entities than a massive one, right? And so if you have different companies, they can negotiate different deals internationally, especially. That's one of those things that I think a lot of people don't mention or talk about because we're sort of in our USA bubble here. But there's still so much potential for some of these companies internationally, and securing rights for shows that are made here and then getting them across the pond, so to speak. There's still so much potential there, and you can do that a lot easier when it's like smaller entities than a big massive one. So we'll see. I don't know. I read somewhere someone was like, oh, what if Apple bought um, one of these which I think it would be interesting because Apple does have its own streaming platform.
Hmm.
It doesn't. Apple, I think it's interesting. Apple, to me, Apple TV Plus is probably one of the best streaming services in terms of quality of content. I can name a number of shows that I've watched on Apple TV Plus that I think are really great. They've flown under the radar because most people don't have Apple TV Plus, or
Right.
they get it for a little bit and they cancel it. And they're constantly pushing out new content, but they can't really compete with the likes of like Netflix or even like Disney, because especially like Disney is a behemoth. They have so much content that they could just, I mean, even if Disney stopped producing new content right now, they could just go into their vault of
Oh
stuff
yeah.
and probably dump it on Disney Plus and constantly have some new things, newish things, um, populate the streaming service. Whereas Apple TV doesn't have that catalog yet, but they have a lot of money, and so they could
Well, they
buy.
do and they don't, because if you look at some of the stories that I've read, is like they're losing like so much money on the Apple uh, TV Plus
Right. So yeah. So
service,
that so they so
but
they're
that's not their
losing.
main
Right. Yeah. It's not.
revenue
It's not their
stream.
main source of revenue. But the reason they're losing money on Apple TV Plus is because they're spending all this money on kind of like what Netflix was running into the issue with a few years back, where they were spending billions to create new shows and content because they were trying to keep up with Disney and eventually like Peacock and stuff. They knew all these other companies were going to be um, creating their own streaming platforms, right? So they're like, we got to get a bunch of our own original content out there because these other companies are pulling their content off of our platform and to get ready for their own streaming platform. So we got to spend money. And Apple's doing something similar where they're like, they get the big name stars, right? You got Jake Gyllenhaal, Harrison Ford, all these people are in these Apple TV Plus series, but you can tell the quality's there, but it's not yet profitable. And the reason it's not yet profitable is because they don't have enough content on there to attract enough subscribers, right? Like I still have a Netflix subscription. I don't really watch Netflix that often, but when I do, there's so many options
Hmm.
of content to watch. So I kind of keep it as like, okay, if I ever get bored and I need to watch something, I will pull up Netflix and watch it. Um, Apple TV, I mean, you just don't have, if you're paying the money that you're paying for Apple TV Plus, unless you're just going to watch all of their new content, right? There's nothing beyond that to just watch. And I think if they bought some of these properties that are essentially could be up for grabs now that they're being spun off from some of these other companies, that could boost their library, their catalog, and make them more attractive to people who could be potential subscribers, and then thus make that streaming platform profitable. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, they were
We'll
late
see
to
how
the
everything
game.
plays out.
A lot of things were already taken up, so yes, you're right. I think that could help
Yeah,
um,
it could.
boost them a little bit. But
All right, so we're right in the middle, I think, of summer box office season, and it has been a very interesting one, to say the least. There's a number of movies that have been already come out. There's some movies that are still yet to come out, that everybody's going to be eyeing to see how well the box office does this summer, because the last few years post COVID, it's been kind of hit or miss. And I think a lot of studios and movie theater owners are really hoping that this summer can be the bounce back just because of the slate of movies that are set to come out. So we're going to talk about it because we've seen some of these movies, and some of them have done well so far. Some of them have not done well. And we still have quite a few more movies to go. So right now, leading the pack for the summer box office is not the number one movie of the year, but it is the number one movie of the summer so far, and that's Lilo and Stitch from Disney. Not surprised by that. I think if we had done an episode where we did our like summer office predictions and decided like, okay, let's see which movie do we think is going to do the best, which one's going to win the summer, I would have definitely put Lilo and Stitch at the top.
really,
Uh,
hmm,
yeah, I mean, I've told a couple people this, and they're like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah," because one, Disney. It's hard to bet against Disney when it comes to like a family friendly uh, movie. We can talk about we'll talk about this about Disney and Marvel, like because sometimes those are hit or miss whether it does well at the box office. Again, this is post pandemic, but for the most part, when it's a Disney, and I'm not talking about like Pixar, and I'm a Disney family friendly movie, they tend to do well. Just they do. Then you have the fact that it's a family friendly movie. Think about the movies that have done the best in the last few years overall, like the Super Mario Brothers movie,
Mhm.
a Minecraft movie this year. That's still the number one movie right now. So a lot of these like family friendly movies have been doing really well, and I think part of that is because even though box office numbers are down, people aren't returning to theaters like they used to. When you have that one family friendly movie come out after 3-4 months of there not being nothing out in the theaters, people take their kids to the theater. So that's what we saw with like Minecraft. That's what we're seeing with Lilo and Stitch, right? There's been a stretch where there's been no like good
Family
family
movies,
friendly
yeah.
movies, and this is
Mhm.
that one opportunity, especially start of the summer, taking the kids to see Lilo and Stitch. So it's going to be interesting to see how well How to Train Your Dragon does because it also fits into that. But it's coming, what, 2-3 weeks after Lilo and Stitch, and I don't know if that's enough time separating it to get people to also then take their kids back to the theater again because going to the movies can be expensive. But yes, I would have put Lilo and Stitch at the top.
That's interesting because, so what do you think of Elio?
I don't think I'm sorry to say, I don't think Elio is going to do particularly well at the box office. Pixar's in kind of a flux, and the fact that every time I go to the movies now, and I'm talking with people who have kids, um, they are like, I don't know what Elio's about, or
Exactly.
I haven't seen any ads for Elio, and I'm like, that's a problem.
Well,
That's not good.
it's been pushed back multiple times. Got
So I don't,
stuck.
yeah, I don't, I'm not putting that one up high on the
Mm-mm.
list. Uh, but I think How to Train Your Dragon is going to do well. I just don't know how it's going to do considering that it's following Lilo and Stitch.
And well, I guess they're both live action adaptations,
Hmm.
but
And both beloved, I mean, Lilo and Stitch, the animated movie, is one of those like multi
yeah.
generational kind of movies, and it spawned was there a sequel? Yes, there was a sequel and then series. They had I think
Hmm.
3 or 4 Lilo and Stitch series that were popular, and Stitch is a popular character. And then How to Train Your
Hmm.
Dragon, the animated films, I love them. A lot of people do. Um, and then they have a whole land in the new Universal theme park that's
Which is
centered around How to
fantastic.
Train Your Dragon. So I think How to Train Your Dragon, which is coming out this weekend, as of this recording. I think it's going to do well at the box office. Like I said, I just don't know how well it's going to do following Lilo and Stitch because I saw this discussion online because people were talking about this. They were like, "Oh, well, how well do we think How to Train Your Dragon is going to do?" And people are like, "Oh, it's gonna beat Lilo and Stitch. It's gonna break." And I'm like, and somebody was like, "I don't think people understand how little parents take their kids to the movies now." I know when I was younger, we would go to the movies quite often, but I have friends who have kids and they take them every once in a while. So it
You're
has to
right. It's
be.
expensive.
It's
Like,
expensive and it has to be the. So I think How to Train Your Dragon is going to do well. I just don't know how well it's going to do. Maybe I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how it does because I would wonder if it would have done better if it came out maybe like a month after Lilo and Stitch versus like a few weeks or I don't know. But anyway, but yeah, Lilo and Stitch is at the top. I'm actually slightly surprised at how poorly Mission Impossible is doing, but not so much based on like the reviews. Like I think going into the summer, if you had asked me how I think Mission Impossible is going to do, just based on anticipation and my own bias of like I really love this franchise, I would have put it higher up. or making more money than it is, but it's not doing particularly well.
Well, but it's
Given its
weird because
budget and given where it is in the franchise.
I also heard like it was the biggest opening for a Mission Impossible movie.
But was
Um,
that accounting for inflation? Because that's always a thing you have to consider. Because any
that's true.
movie, any movie that's coming out now, if you think about like a ticket to go to see a movie in the evenings is like $18 around here. Okay, so 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 12. So already that's $4 or $5 more, than it would have been a few years ago. So if a movie's doing even slightly less than the other movie, it's making more money. So that's why it's like, is it adjusted for inflation or is it not? Because yes, it did.
Hmm.
It had the biggest opening of any, I think, Mission Impossible movie ever. I think biggest opening. But if we were to account for inflation, where would it fall then? And I think that's where you can see how well it's doing in terms of the franchise, because yeah, it had the biggest opening, but if you account for inflation and it's like millions and millions of dollars less, that means fewer people showed up. And that money, that gap is made up by the cost of tickets versus more people going to see it. But it's still got
But
some weeks.
I mean, like, well, another thing too. I mean, I feel like the quality of the movies has not been bad this summer. I mean,
No,
we've
no.
had some summers where it's like, oh man, everything I've seen is a stinker.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
supposed to be in there, but like, we both like Thunderbolts, but then I just read that Thunderbolts is they're considering it a flop because it didn't
Yeah.
produce like these other movies. But I'm like, it's not the Avengers, it's the new
Yeah.
Avengers, but it's like, it's not going to be that um the
It's not going
draw
to
if
make
you
a
were
billion
not
dollars. Like, and I don't think any Marvel
correct.
movie
Yeah.
coming out in the next, I don't know. I mean, I hate to say next couple of years, but just, I don't think any current Marvel movie on the slate, with maybe the exception of maybe Doomsday, is going to make close to $1 billion. And I think
What
that's
do you
just the new reality.
what do you think the Fantastic Four, how will it do?
Well, I think that's going to depend on a couple of things. So I have this theory. Well, so I think with Thunderbolts, like, it had really great reviews, all things
Hmm.
considered, and it didn't do too well at the box office. It's not cracking those numbers that Disney anticipated. I'm even shocked with how low the number is, considering the reviews were so great. But I think part of that comes from the fact that, I mean, you look at Captain America: Brave New World. It surpassed, was it 200 million at the domestic box office? Was it domestic or was it
Yeah,
global?
yes, I believe it
Hold on,
was
I think I
domestic.
have worldwide. Yes, it was domestic, because worldwide it made 415 million. Okay, so it surpassed 200 million at the domestic box office, and I think it probably could have made 500 million if reviews had been better. It had mixed reviews, and a lot of them were really negative. I enjoyed it, but I know a lot of people who just were like, no, I didn't like it at all. And I think the people who showed up for Captain America: Brave New World were Marvel fans who were just the loyal Marvel fans and they're going to watch every Marvel movie. And then other people who were giving Marvel another chance because they had kind of abandoned Marvel. They're like, oh my gosh, there's all these shows I haven't kept up with, the stories, I don't know everything that's happening. The last few movies I've watched, I have not liked. But okay, try Captain America because it's a character I'm familiar with, although this is the Sam Wilson version instead of the Steve Rogers, but I'm going to give it a
Hmm.
shot. And they watched it, and the word of mouth coming out of that movie wasn't stellar. So then you have Thunderbolts come out, and I think the people who were maybe going to be like, yeah, okay, I think it caused Thunderbolts to lose some of its momentum that it would have had. And again, the reviews were great, but I don't think that was enough to salvage, again, the people who were like, I'm going to give Marvel a chance, and I was disappointed by Captain America. I will wait for Thunderbolts. thing about Fantastic Four, there's so much pressure with this movie because all the attempts with Fantastic Four, you either have movies that have been successful, like the first Fantastic Four movie, which was the Fox movie, that she did really well at the box office, but not so well with critics.
Mhm.
Um, and then every iteration after that has just been critical, and then also some of them have been fans have ripped them apart as well. Can Marvel manage to create a successful Fantastic Four movie that critics like, fans like, and then can also bring that money back to? I don't know. It's a lot of pressure. I think it'll do fine, but it's really gonna depend on if this movie is good.
I f-
If this Here's the thing, because there's a lot of interest in Fantastic Four. There's huge interest. We saw like the tickets went on sale, and Fandango's like, oh my gosh, this is one of our best ticket sales we've ever had. And then Superman tickets went on sale, and then it trumped that. But they're like, oh my gosh, this is one of our best. So there's a lot of interest there. I think it's going to come down to is if this movie is good. If it is good, if it comes out and it's good, critics like it, fans like it as well, word of mouth spreads, people go, okay, all right, Marvel did it with Fantastic Four. Okay, I'm gonna check it out because there's a lot of interest there. It's sort of the unknown, so that could work to its advantage. If it's not good, I think some conversations are going to be had. I just think I don't know. I think there's I feel the same way with Superman though. Like I feel like there's a lot
yeah.
riding on Superman, like for DC Studios, because this is the movie that's launching their new DC universe. And if Superman comes out and it doesn't deliver, I don't know what that means for the other movies that are potentially, the Supergirl movie that's supposed to come out. I saw a story that James Gunn said that a Wonder Woman movie's in development. They're writing it as we speak. I think he said. What's going to happen with that if audiences aren't responding to Superman? Just because people keep saying superhero fatigue. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think people are burnt out of superhero movies that are part of these larger universes that they can't keep up with.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I agree. I think also, um, we're at the stage in the Marvel universe where we're at characters that people don't know
mhm.
a lot about, other than Fantastic Four, obviously. But like, so it takes a little bit of coaxing to get people to come to see them.
Right, which I think
And I
works
think
in
that's
Captain America's favor, right? Because it's
exactly
again Sam
right.
Wilson, but it's still Captain America.
It's still Captain America. You understand that character, even if you're not up to speed with everything that's going on
Mhm.
there. Um, the DC is like, let's pull back and like really focus on our main people. So if they can do it right, this is a great time because they can really have the potential to take off. And they're not going back to like origin stories, from what I understand. It's kind of like these people have already been
Oh yeah, yeah,
established in these
yeah.
universes,
Hmm.
which I think is a smart move because we don't need another Batman origin. We get it. His parents died. I
Yes,
love
and
Batman,
yeah,
but
yeah. But that's all we
Lord,
ever see, and so every version has
yes.
that as the jumping off point, and then you're like, okay, enough already. Let's explore some of this other stuff. I agree.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then of course we have a bunch of movies getting ready to come out. I mean, we already talked about How to Train Your Dragon, Elio, but then we've got movies like F1, which is sort of that unknown as well. Like it's a racing movie, race car movie with Brad Pitt. Is that going to appeal to? It might appeal to the people who like Top Gun Maverick,
Yeah.
right? That audience, and that movie did well, but also that movie had Top Gun
Right.
to come off of. So we'll see about
Uh,
that.
I
Um,
think you have a built-in audience there, but whether or not they'll show up for this is,
right?
like if there's
Yeah,
race
it's
car
always about
fans want
can
to
we
see
get the people
Brad
to show
Pitt,
up?
yeah, like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um,
Then we also have Superman. We just talked about Jurassic World Rebirth. 28 years later, Fantastic Four. We should talk about. So yeah, I mean, there's still a ton of movies that either have like built-in audiences in terms of like Jurassic World Rebirth, where you have that built-in fan base, or Fantastic Four, or even 28 years later because it's part of a franchise. So yeah, we're gonna see how we'll see how it shapes up. I'm pretty sure by the time by the time the end of the summer comes along, we can do an episode where we talk about the state of the summer box office. Last topic: if you plan on heading to the theaters this summer to watch any of the movies we talked about, and you go to AMC, you're probably gonna see more ads for the movie because
Of
AMC says
course.
that they're adding more ads. I don't why.
Okay, so
I mean,
here's
I
the
know
question,
why,
Ashley.
money, but
Do we do we get to the point where your movie will be interrupted by an ad
I mean, like it is on the
at
streaming
some point?
services. I hope not, because at that point, no, people are not going to go to the movies. If and I'm a diehard like pushing the movie theater experience, like go to the movies whenever friends are like, should I wait? I'm like, go to the movies, go, go, go. I love going to the movies. I love the movie going experience. If they add, if they put ads in the middle of the movie, I'm done. Like I love going to
Yeah.
movies, but I can do that at home. Like that's what happens when I'm watching anything on streaming now. It's like you watch it and then
Mm-hmm.
you got an ad in the middle, because all the
Hate
streaming
that. Yes.
platforms are adding ads. And no, I mean, I just movie theaters have to come up with ways to not only keep the audience that's coming, but also to bring back people who've stopped going. And that's not the way. But I already think the ad situation at the movies is getting ridiculous because I literally can time. I mean, I usually go to Regal, and it's at like 25 minutes now. At some point, it's just like I mean, I like seeing the trailers, but I just it gets to the point where like, do I want to get to the movies? This like you say it starts at 7, but you know it's gonna be like
Right.
7:25 before the movie even starts, and then you're watching a 2.5 hour movie. It's getting a little ridiculous,
That's a
but
lot.
it's a lot. And I have so
And
many questions like, what kind of ads are you showing?
well, I imagine it's probably just going to be a continuation of what we have already. Like every once in a while, it's like a car ad
Yeah, cell
or whatever
phone
that's
and
in the middle of like a the previews and
yeah, the
stuff like
pre-show
that. But
stuff. I mean,
um,
again, I know why they're doing it for money, but like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the solution is because I know like movie theater owners are facing this very tough time right now because a big chunk of their money revenue comes from like concessions, and that's already expensive. People
mhm,
complain about that all the time. They only get a small chunk from like ticket sales,
right,
and then so you like where else do you get this money? And you're like, well, we could add more ads and get some revenue, but I don't know. I just feel like maybe if they had offered more premium movie experiences, I think I would pay for that. I mean, we've talked about this before, like the whole like events. Every time they have a movie like Wicked or something come out, like sell. Well, I know they do a lot with the popcorn buckets and stuff,
yeah, I was
but
going to
maybe
say,
sell more popcorn
now
buckets
there's
or make
Funko Pops there,
yeah
and there's
something to kind of
blankets,
tie
and
in. I don't know because I
yeah.
just ads more ads are not my thing. Ugh.
Now, again, if they partner this up with them listing the start time and then the movie start time, I don't have a problem with this because I can skip it. But
Yeah. If they do okay, if they say we're gonna have more ads, but also we're gonna list both times of like when the movie is actually gonna start, like when that if it's a Universal movie, that Universal Globe starts. That's when this starts versus when the ads start. I maybe
right,
could be okay with that. But again, I'm someone who likes to watch the trailers though, and so my
I do
biggest
too.
problem is like I show up early because what they do is sometimes they have like pre-show stuff where they have like movie trivia and
Yeah,
whatever stuff, and then they'll have a few
newsy.
ads, and then they'll do some trailers, and then they'll throw in some more ads, and so it's like
Yes.
if I'm trying to avoid the ads, it's hard to do that if I want to see the trailers. So, I mean, that's just first world problems. But yeah, anyway. Why AMC? I mean, they're not the only ones doing this, but like, this is the one story that's been popping up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what's new in theaters? We already mentioned one of the movies that's out in theaters this weekend. It's How to Train Your Dragon. I already posted my review of that. So, if you're at all interested in my thoughts on that, you can check that out. Long story short, I really enjoyed it, even though it is basically a shot for shot remake of the animated film. I thought they did a good job with it, and I liked it. Um, it's not new in theaters this weekend, but it's probably new for a lot of people just because it just recently went wide, and that's the Phoenician Scheme, which I also just saw,
I
and
did
I
too.
just posted my review up on the channel. So if you're all interested in that, you can check that out. Wasn't really for me. I thought it was okay. I say this as someone who is, I'm not the biggest Wes Anderson fan, but I like quite a few of his movies. But this one, I like his aesthetic. I know it's a little weird and quirky and stuff, and I like the quirky characters that he has in his movies. But this one was just kind of empty for me, like as a
I
whole. Like
agree.
I like the first half of it, where I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting, and like Benicio del Toro's great. I thought his character was interesting, but by the time the movie ended, I was just like, it just felt kind of hollow. I don't know. Hmm,
Yeah, I would have
it's
a hard
okay.
time telling somebody what this was about.
Well, that's another part
Um,
too. Where it's just a lot of plot thrown
yes,
at you, and people are talking fast, and they're saying, "Yeah, yeah,
and it's just I don't know. Like it's almost like so my relationship with Wes Anderson, I didn't love when he first started, and a lot of people were like, "Oh my gosh!" Like the Royal Tenenbaums
mm-hmm,
and uh, Rushmore and even Bottle Rocket and
mm-hmm,
all that
mm-hmm,
stuff. Um, I was having a hard time, but I was like, okay, like he definitely has like a certain vision
mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. And then I kind of like flipped and I started really enjoying a lot of his movies that came out over the last like decade or so.
Like Grand
Um,
Budapest Hotel and stuff like that."
Grand Budapest, like Fantastic Mr. Fox, I
Mm-hmm,
love.
mm-hmm,
I love my favorite of his is Moonrise Kingdom.
mm-hmm.
Like all of these movies that kind of came out during this time period, but now I feel like he's reverted back. And like I did not like Asteroid City. I
I
thought that
didn't
was
either. I thought this
another
one was
one.
better than Asteroid City,
I did
but yeah,
too.
yeah. But that one wasn't my favorite, so the bar wasn't particularly
Yeah,
high. Yeah.
and he's doing like weird things with like narrators that don't really make a huge impact on it's just it's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of
um,
like, because I often have this conversation with people I know who are not Wes Anderson fans, and they're like, "This is why I don't like Wes Anderson,"
you're
and
right.
it's like the Venetian Scheme has a lot of, it has more of that, like the things that people will point out and say, "This is why I don't like Wes Anderson." Felt like he doubled down on a lot of those things, if that makes sense. So I said this in my review. I think people who are big Wes Anderson fan, like you like love pretty much every movie he's ever made, like you just a loyalist, will probably like Phoenician Scheme. Might even love it. The crowd that I was watching with, I mean, some people were like loving it, like laughing at
Oh,
everything. I was like, I'm lost. um,
the
but they were
the
into it, and I think if you're not a Wes Anderson fan, this is not going to be the movie that wins you over. Like it's just, this is not going to be
yeah,
that.
the crowd that I saw it with was not uh, they reacted to a
Mm-hmm,
few things. I think I laughed at like two things in it
mm-hmm,
that really actually made me laugh out loud. And um, but it wasn't getting like a huge reaction. There were a
mm-hmm,
couple things that did, but uh, I also think it's funny, and I know there's counter programming and all that kind of stuff. It's
mm-hmm,
weird to release this in the summer blockbuster time
mm-hmm.
because it's not going to make like that's not going to be a big draw.
Yeah, I mean, but this
Um,
is not a movie that's trying to get the big box office. I mean,
but
you
then
probably
why
look.
put it
Well,
here?
I mean, that's just the case. I think with most Wes Anderson movies, like they're not big box office draws. I mean, I don't have the
Mm-hmm.
numbers here, but I guarantee if you were to look at the movies we listed, talked about, and see where they did box office wise, they would be they would pale in comparison to the other movies we were talking about this summer. And that's the thing. These are, even though Wes Anderson is a well-known director, he's not making like big commercial successful movies. I mean, he's still very much in the indie space in a lot of
Yes,
ways. So yeah,
yes,
so
and
I
that
think I literally think it's just that. It's just counter programming, releasing in the summer, versus I guess, winter time, and maybe I don't know. I don't know. Because maybe I don't know, maybe if you released it in the fall, you could maybe push for maybe more of like presence for the awards, because that's when.
Well,
But
that's
maybe he'd
yeah,
be
that's what I
maybe
was.
it would be competing with so many of those other movies. I think sometimes it gets tricky with movies like that, because if you release it too early in the year, people forget about your movie, right? We've seen that happen with some movies that release in like March and April, where it's like by the time
Yes,
award season comes along, everybody's like, "Well, what about this movie?" Like that's what happened with Challengers. I just was like, it got completely shut out. Like, what happened? People just out of sight, out of mind. But then you also run the risk of, if you're releasing around the time where everybody else, all the other studios are releasing their big movies, you get drowned out. Like you just get
right.
overshadowed. So maybe you release it in the middle of the year, that so it's still on people's minds, but you don't get completely forgotten or overshadowed by some of the other movies.
And I wonder too if it's just like because there are so many big names in here,
Mm-hmm.
they're maybe hoping that like, oh, Tom Hanks is in this, I'm going to go see it. He's in it for 2 minutes,
Yeah, yeah,
like it's
I
um,
don't think. I mean, that's like with most of his movies, though, right? He always has some
yeah.
big name stars that pop in just to play like a small little bit role. They have maybe two, three lines of dialogue, and it's just like a nice little cameo, but they're not like central to the cast. But yeah, Phoenician Scheme out in theaters. Wasn't there a movie that you said that you
Yeah, the other one that I saw real quick, or just here's a quick rundown of like a couple. Um, Bring Her Back. I saw from the directors of Talk to Me, which was an Australian horror film from a couple years ago. I loved it. Ashley did not.
no
We
idea.
actually just talked about this because I didn't know how she felt about this, but um, I this one is really good. It is very disturbing.
Mm,
There is, just trigger warning. There's some their deaths. Like
mm,
the two kids' father passes away. There's a kid that passed away, so they are dealing with some of that.
mm.
It is about trauma and how it's processed and that kind of thing. And when it starts off, you're like, oh, okay, like whatever. But it slowly builds. But once it gets going, you're like, ooh.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
the people that I went with all liked it, but I don't think they were prepared for
Like how
the
dark and
disturbingness
disturbing.
of
Okay.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's not jump scary, but it's just
And
creepy vibes
emotionally.
and disturbing.
Okay.
But I enjoyed it. It's one of the best horror movies I think I've seen this year. Um,
Hmm.
so if you're looking for horror movies, maybe check that out.
Hmm.
I will say I did see Fountain of Youth on Apple TV Plus, and that's Natalie Portman and John Krasinski. That was awful. Um,
Ah.
um, just skip it. That's all I'm going to say about that. I think those are the two big like new release
Mm-hmm.
ones that I've seen lately
Okay.
out of that.
So we're gonna move to our final segment. One cool thing is where we share something cool that we either saw, liked, learned. So Jed, kick us off. What is your one cool thing for this week?
Yeah, I was going back and forth on what to pick this week and or this episode, and I'm gonna land on I got lucky over like last weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to purchase a Nintendo Switch 2, um,
Okay.
and
You're one
on
of
one of the
those.
restocks, so I didn't have to wait in
Oh,
line
well,
or
that's good.
anything like that. Yeah. Um, it is so much fun. I was a little like, I was like, oh, am I going to regret purchasing this or
Mm-hmm.
whatever? I haven't owned a Nintendo system since like the original Wii, so it's been a long
Oh my
time.
goodness. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, but my wife and I mean, obviously we got Mario Kart because it came with
Mm-hmm.
that, but we downloaded a Mario game that I think was for the Switch 1 that they ported over to the Switch 2.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had so much fun playing it. It's a good distraction for everything that's going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
And it's just easy to jump in and out of.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have like those games don't have crazy plots or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that to
Mm-hmm.
remember. And it's just a nice way to like just spend some time like kind of nostalgia fun
Mm-hmm.
of being a kid and playing old school Nintendo and everything like that. So we've had a great
Cool.
time. I know not everybody has been able to get their hands on one, or it is quite expensive and
No, or
everything else.
I saw all the like I have those days are behind me. I thought
Yeah, I
about it
don't.
because I never had a Nintendo Switch, and I know a lot of people who have a Nintendo Switch and we're going to get this the two. But I just thought of the headache of like trying to secure it
Yeah,
online, the pre-sale, and then okay, people were lining up at stores, and I was like, I have
yeah,
enough things going on in my life that between all the movies I'm watching, TV shows, and theme parks I'm visiting, I was like, I honestly don't have. There's no reason for me to buy it because I honestly wouldn't have time to play it. But that's
right,
cool.
right.
At least you're enjoying it.
What
Okay.
about you? What's your cool thing?
My one cool thing is this is something. It's not new. It's something that's been going on for a while, but I love it, and I thought I would mention it because every once in a while they do update it from time to time. So Variety has this thing called Actors on Actors,
Hmm.
and they do different pairings for different actors, and they basically interview each other, and they talk and have conversations, and some of them are absolutely amazing. Some of them are bonkers depending on who they pair with each other, but all of them are interesting because you learn a lot about these actors through these conversations.
Yeah.
And so just an example of some of them that they've had recently. They've had like Amanda Seyfried and Adam Brody. Um, they've had Tilda Swinton and Adrian Brody, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Patrick Schwarzenegger, which it's a fun one. You should watch it because
I
a
saw the
dad
behind the
interviewing his
scenes
son
where
with his son, and it's like, oh my gosh. Um,
I saw the behind the scenes where Danny DeVito crashed it. I don't know if that
yeah,
was
yeah,
in
and,
the
and Danny
actual
DeVito did one
episode.
with Colin Farrell,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
nice because they were
They
both
were both
played
penguins. Yeah,
exactly,
that was
exactly. So
so
sometimes the
cool. Yeah.
pairings are really great where it's like, okay, there's this really nice connection, and you can use that to like start this conversation with these actors. And sometimes the pairings are so odd, you're like, how's this
Yeah.
going to play out? Where it kind of reminds me
Was it
sometimes of like Graham Norton, where he has a couch full of just
mhm.
random celebrities, and you're like, if you were to show it to me,
Was it
I'd be like, how are they going to have this conversation?
Was it Domingo and Timothy Chalamet
Coleman Domingo
from
and
like Around
Kieran
the Word?
Culkin.
Oh, Kieran Culkin.
Yes.
That one was great.
Yes.
That was so
And yeah,
cool.
just kind of like, how
And
would
it's a
these
pair that
two
I would
pair?
not have.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then it was like, oh, and they're completely like opposite personalities, but
Yes.
that's
Where
what
Karen
made it
Culkin's like
interesting.
talks like the speed of light, and then Coleman Domingo's kind of like more relaxed and chill and just like
Yeah.
vibing. But yeah, so anyway, uh, Variety's Actors on Actors. They have it on their website. You can watch videos, and I believe they also have it on like their YouTube. Um,
I believe it's on their YouTube,
Yeah,
yes,
so check those
and
out
I
if you're
see it all the
just
time
curious about any of
pop
the
up on.
actors and learning about them. It's great. All right, so that
Yeah,
wraps
that's
up.
a great one. Good
Yeah,
pick.
so that wraps up this week's episode of the recap. I hope you all enjoyed um, watching us discuss these topics here, and of course, make sure you subscribe to the Ashley Talks Movies YouTube channel. That way, you can keep up with not only the movie reviews that I'm posting, but also more episodes of the recap with me and Jed. So thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.